All right, today's topic that we are going to demo today is the analysis section within the application, and more specifically FS Pro. I'm going to lead the demo today, but I also have Rick Mowry and Sam Amato here to help me answer questions. So please feel free to ask questions as we go along, throw questions in the chat, that sort of thing. And I'll share my screen and get started. Rick, can you give me a thumbs up? You can see the screen.
Yep, we've got you.
Okay, my internet's been off and on today, so I apologize if it goes off. Let me know, and I'll troubleshoot. Hopefully, we don't have that same issue I had a little bit earlier today on a different demo. Again, I'm going to demo the analysis tab here on WFDIS NextGen. I'm actually in WFDIS production right now. I just received a request from the Coronado National Forest looking for some help with FS Pro. And working with the regional analyst there, Richie Sinkovitz, we're just going to go ahead and use this fire for our demo day. So it'll actually be a live fire or a live demo on a live incident, which will be kind of cool. So this is the Mason incident. I've already searched for the incident and pulled it up, started the decision on the incident. So I'm here on the analysis tab. And I'm going to zoom into the fire so folks get a good idea on where we're at here. We're down here by Bisbee, Arizona. Fire was reported pretty small. However, if I come in here and turn on my heat detection information, you can see where the fire's at. Start there. Right there's a little fire guard perimeter for the incident. It's like 15 to 30 acres based on what the local unit told me. And so we're going to do an FS Pro run for this little fire here. And to start it off, I'm actually going to show the request portion for requesting an analysis. So if you're not a fire behavior analyst, but you need an analysis done on an incident, you can come to the analysis tab. And right here, you can click on you want an FS Pro run, and then click request analysis. It'll bring up a panel on the right-hand tab here and default an analysis name and a start date to the current date. And then it asks for a description. So in this one, I'm going to say that we need an FS Pro run for the Mason fire for today. I'm going to save the request. And then on the existing analysis page, there's two pieces to this. I'm going to first touch on the existing analysis list here. You can see that run that I just requested here, status as requested. This will also show any analyses that have been completed or started for the incident. If you're not a fire behavior analyst, you won't be able to interact with any statuses that are not marked as complete for strategic or operational use. There's two categories there, and we'll show statusing here in a little while. The other tab I'll briefly mention before we start diving down into creating the analysis for this fire is the analysis summary. This is the piece that will initially go into the WFDIS decision, and this is a open box narrative field for the analysis for an incident. So it can include any of the analysis outputs, as well as notes, assumptions, limitations for each model. You can also bring in outside sources for analysis if you did any analyses in FlamMap or even Behave or any other analysis type or source for that fire. Any information can be added in here in terms of a narrative field with included images. So you can embed images and upload those directly into this little narrative field here. Alternatively, if the incident basically doesn't have any analysts available to run analysis for the fire, and you're unable to get analysis and you need to get your decision published, you can click on the Do Not Include Any Analysis in this decision. You click on that checkbox there and just include a justification as to why you're not going to include any analyses for the fire. Those are just a little bit of housekeeping piece. So for this incident, we're going to start with a few things here. I'm actually going to open my drawing tool to create a couple layers that I'm going to need for the analysis. I'm going to start with the ignition for the fire. Since this is a brand new start and we only have this one little fire guard polygon, I'm actually going to use that as my ignition for the fire. So I'm going to grab the ignition, and then I'm going to type in FG for fire guard, and then I'm just going to put today's date because that's where I'm going to do the ignition, and include a timestamp, so 1308. I'm actually going to use a hyphen, not a backslash there. Okay, so once this page is open, I can actually click on that fire guard polygon. And here you can see it highlighted and it brought it up. And I can copy that feature. It'll turn yellow. And then I can save that feature I just copied as my ignition. Alternatively, I could have clicked one of these tools here on the bottom and drawn a ignition around that fire guard polygon. But it's kind of nice to be able to just copy the polygon itself and include that. Another thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to use this road segment right here as an initial barrier to fire spread. It is just south of the town of Bisbee, so you can see the town here in Bisbee. And that road is fairly good as a barrier in most cases. And in high wind events, it may not hold, but we're going to start with that, using that as a barrier. So to use that as a barrier, I'm also going to use that drawing tool, but I'm going to close it for the moment. I'm going to bring up my layer list here, and I'm going to go down to my utilities and transportation and turn on the roads layer. I'll let the roads layer populate, and then I'm going to turn my drawing tool back on, and I'm going to choose barrier. And then with my little select feature tool highlighted again, I'm going to click on this road segment here. Click just a second. Zoom in a little bit, and I'll click on the road segment again. Oh no, it's going to make a liar out of me. Copied one earlier. Turn off my fire guard and see if that'll help later. Sorry about that. Not want to copy. Oh well. Well, there's always a backup. Since my copy is not going to work on my lines right now, I can draw one. So we're just going to draw one for today. So I'm going to click on the draw polyline tool, and then I'm going to start down here in the town center here, and I'm going to draw my polygon. Tool's not even wanting to work on me. Try one more time here. Hang on just a second. I'm going to have to do a little live troubleshooting here. I'm going to refresh my page. My tool's not wanting to work. Okay, let's try this one more time here. Zoom back in. Drawing tool. Here. There it is. Now it's going to let me. So now I'm going to click on and kind of follow that road my best of my ability. I'll come back and make it a little bit better later, but I'm going to start with that. This is just the initial analysis for this fire. So we're going to start there. We're going to label this as Highway 80. Save it. All right, turn brown. So now we have an initial small little short barrier for fire spread. Last thing we need to add initially is our landscape extent, so we can get a landscape. I'm going to zoom a little bit farther out here, and then I'm going to draw my landscape extent. I'm going to come up here north of the fire quite a ways and draw a box around the fire. Again, I'm going to label it okay, there's my landscape extent. So here's my first couple layers. I'm going to need to run the analysis setup. So now I'm going to start in FS Pro. Well, actually, I'm going to actually go in and grab the requested. So if I'm going to choose a requested analysis, when I click on it, you actually have to click Accept Analysis to start working on it. So we're going to grab that one we requested and run that one. First step here is under the General tab. Here's our analysis name. Of course, we can change that. So if I wanted to put initial calibration, I could do that because that's usually what we start with. If I could spell, that would help. Analysis start date, of course, we do want to run today. Number of fires for this one, we're just going to do a calibration run. So I'm just going to do 500 fires, 7 days. Our crown fire method is Finney or Scott and Reinhardt. So I'm going to choose Finney. Number of days is maxed out at 2,000. So you can run anywhere from 1 to 2,000 fires. And number of days is 1 to 14. So you can run 1 day or up to 14 days of analyses for FS Pro. And here, our ignition file, we're going to grab that FireGuard polygon that we drew or we copied from FireGuard, and then we drew that barrier. So here I'm going to click Highway 80. So we have our ignition and our barrier file. If I wanted to fill a barrier, like if I drew a circle of something non-burnable and wanted to use that as a barrier, I would click Fill Barrier to include that. Underneath that is your notes field. So at any time, you can add any kind of notes you want to for the fourth here. So I could come in here and under General Input Notes, I could just write a note in here. It's saying that we used FireGuard for the ignition, and we hand drew Highway 80 as a barrier. Just to keep some notes so I know what I did, or if an analyst is coming in behind me, they know what I used for my initial runs here. Ooh, I click closed instead of save. I do that a lot. Let's try that one more time. General input, title. Save note instead of close. Okay, now that note is saved, and I can, at any time, I can come back in here and adjust my notes. So I can come in here and kind of beef these up or clean them up, make them look a little prettier at any point in time. So the general tab's filled out. Oh, no, general tab's not filled out. I didn't save. If I hit close, it canceled my inputs here. So we're going to select those again. Click save. Right, general inputs are saved. We're going to go to landscape. And we're going to skip edit landscape initially. We're going to come down to landscape details, and we want to get an initial landscape to kind of evaluate what's out there for this area. So I'm going to choose Landfire 2023 for this one and click Create Landscape. This little status bar right here will continuously check the back end for that run from the from Landfire Product Service. And once that landscape is generated, it'll automatically add the landscape to the map, so you'll know it's done. And you can move on from this tab, and it will continue to process that landscape from the Landfire Product Service. So we're going to jump straight to the Weather tab next while that's processing and start to fill out our weather information. So we're going to start with ERC classes. And in order to pick our weather station, I'm going to turn the weather stations on. So I'm going to come here to Fire Environment, turn on our weather stations so we can see what stations are near this area. It doesn't look like we have anything really close to the fire. We do have a RAW station over here, as well as a few others a little bit farther away. And then we have one up to the northwest as well. I'm going to start with this initial station, the car station, because it is the closest. And you can see that landscape just populated, so it's pretty quick getting a landscape back. We're going to continue on with the weather, and then we'll come back to landscape here in a minute. But we can look at different weather stations all the way out to the furthest that we search out is 100 miles from the fire for stations. And so here's our list of stations. We are going to choose car to start with. And I'm going to go down to my date filter. The default here is 10 years of data. And so 2015 to 2025, I'm actually going to change this to 2024 because 2025 is not an entire year yet. And we want to pull our historical climatology for an entire year of records. So we're actually going to pull our climatology. It's still 10 years, but 2015 to 2024. And then the default for our calendar year is January 1st to December 31st. I'm going to leave that be for right now and click Generate ERC Classes. And here comes our ERC classes here. I can expand the panel to get all of my data. The default is 60, 70, 80, 90, and 97th percentile for those classes. I can't add rows. If I wanted to add in like an 85th percentile row, I could do that here. The other thing to note, within this is you do need to make sure you look at your herbaceous and your woody fuel moistures because they do come in maxed to the minimum, which is 30 and 60, and so you need to change those values. I know those values right now because I was working on a fire just north of this with the local unit, so I'm going to go ahead and populate those as 40 and 70. We're just going to tick it up by 10% on each one for right now. Again, this is just our initial run, so we don't need to tweak anything super specific for our calibrations, but we definitely need to adjust those models because at your 60th percentile ERC, you should not have cured vegetation on the landscape. If I needed just burn period or spotting probability, I could also do that here, but I'm not going to on this initial run. Next, I'm going to go down to ERC stream and generate my ERC stream. So this will pull an ERC stream from your analysis start date back to, it'll pull a year of data that you can view within the application. So I can view the data going back a year from my start date. So if I scroll down here, and you see all the way to April 30th right here, we have values. If I jumped forward, anything with a -1 after the start date sets the model up for running artificial seasons. So these -1s are fine, but if I had a -1 in any of my data previous to my analysis start date, I would need to populate that data, and the system will throw an error and show you where those fields are messed up. Okay, I'm going to assume that's good to go initially here, and then I'm going to set up my forecast. I only want to pull 2 days of forecast for this model run, so I'm going to set that at 2. Currently, these drop-downs only have one option, so I'm going to leave them alone and pull my forecast. Another thing of note, there's a little bit of difference in our forecasted ERCs versus our current ERCs in our data stream, and that's because we are pulling the daily max for the ERC stream itself. So you see 64.4 there, and then our forecasted values pull the 1300 ops. And so for some locations across the nation, these two values can be quite different. For this model here in the Southwest, they're actually very similar because our maxes usually do occur around the 1300 to 1500 timeline. So I'm going to leave those alone, but you may have to adjust these ERCs just a little bit, and that's based on the data and how we pull it from FIMS. Next, I'm going to pull in my winds. And so again, with FS Pro, you can change your weather station to a different weather station for your winds versus your ERCs. And for this one, we're not going to change it. But if the winds at the car station were not similar to the winds they were seeing on the incident itself, it may be better to change your station to pull different winds in. I'm going to go ahead and collapse this so we can get to see the map a little bit better. Date filter, again, defaults to 10 years of data, and that's okay. The calendar does also default to a full year, and you often don't need that much data for the wind. So I'm actually going to set my wind bin up to be something different. You can click on the little calendar here and back up to choose a different calendar date for your month day. So I go all the way back to April here. Say, okay, I'm going to do April 1st. But you can also type in those values. So I'm going to pull April 1st to June 30th. That way I'm only pulling 2 months of data. And then your start hour and end hour. Start hour is defaulted to 10 o'clock or 1000 and 2000 for stop hour. I'm going to leave those alone as well. And then your winds type, you can choose between the 10-minute average winds, your gust winds, or both. I'm going to leave it at both for this one to generate my wind matrix. Expand it back out so you can see all the different bends. And so we have bends at 5 mile an hour increments from 5 to 50, and then directions at 45 degrees, so 45, 90, so on and so forth to 360. These are the different proportion of winds within each one of these bins or buckets. And I can look at a wind rose to look at where the bulk of my winds are coming from this RAW station. So based on this, I can see that most of our winds are coming out of the southwest, but we do have some representation from basically all other directions as well in this RAW station. On the right-hand side, this legend, if you want to just look at where our highest winds come from, I can turn off these other values and look at just winds that are 40 mile an hour and above, which is interesting for this RAW station that all of our higher wind gusts actually come out of the north. So that actually may lead me to change my model RAW station to something else to better represent our gust winds if they were, say, out of the south or southwest. But for this example, we're going to leave it be. And then once I've completed my winds, my ERC stream and my ERC classes, I'm going to save. This piece is very important right now. Once you hit the save button, you need to wait until a blue box comes in on the top of the screen that says saved. That way it just eliminates the potential for errors that might happen. So we're just going to wait a few seconds while this processes. We'll have the spinner, and then screen will come back just like it did now. And then here in a few seconds, we'll see a blue saved that comes up. Hopefully it doesn't make me wait too long here. There's the save button. So now we know that our weather tab's saved correctly. So I can minimize that again, and I want to look at that landscape that I pulled in. So here's my landscape. I can click on these pixels, and I can see what fuel models the model is picking up. So the brown is a GR2. This bright yellow is going to be a grass model 2 or GS2 or GR2, not GS2. This dark maroon model here, fuel model is an SH7, so that represents some chaparral fuels. So I can evaluate my landscape to make sure my landscape is correct. And in this case, I know based on talking with the local unit that not all these landscapes are fuel models are currently represented in this landscape, and I do need to make some tweaks. So I'm going to jump back to landscape here, and I'm going to make some tweaks with the landscape editor. And so knowing what I know from the local unit, I need to come in here and I need to change all the GR2 or 102 back to 101 because the fuel loading is not as heavy as it is some years. So I'm going to change all those models back to 101. Save that. And then I want to change from all my GS2 back to GS1. So these are two edits that I know right off the bat, based on working with the local unit, that need to be done to get any kind of accurate model on the landscape. Because what's normally represented isn't the case this year. They're having a pretty extreme drought. Once I know those are in here, I can sort them if I need to. And the hierarchy is that each pixel can be changed more than once. And so that's important to know if you're setting up if you're masking out your perimeter as 99 unburnable, you actually need to make that change on the bottom versus the top like we used to in WFDS Classic. That way that the system, Landfire Product Service, processes that edit last and applies that unburnable to the entire perimeter. Otherwise, you can change a pixel back and forth. It can be confusing if you don't understand that hierarchy here. I'm going to save my rules. And then I'm going to regenerate a landscape. I'm going to leave my extent alone. I'm going to leave my data source alone and my resolution alone and just create a new landscape. It will verify that you want to overwrite your existing one. So I'm going to click yes, and that immediately invalidates the landscape currently on the map. The reason I know it invalidates that landscape is, one, this landscape is processing again, so we got our blue bar. But if I come all the way over here to run results where I submit the model, it'll show that our landscape is missing. And so we can't run the model until that checkbox is checked. So we're going to have to wait a few seconds for that to process and come back from Landfire Product Service. While that's running, though, I can show you a couple other things on the Run Results tab. First off, the outputs. So once we have a successful model run, we can download outputs from the Run Results tab. You can pull in the entire model output from the Fire Model Services Framework, where we process our models. You can also pull the daily acres or the event coverage text files separate from the whole model. So you just click on one of these and click the download button. I can't right now, of course, because we haven't even ran the model yet. But once the model comes back successful, we'll be able to run that model. Looks like my landscape just came back. And as you can see, that bright yellow disappeared. And so we don't have any of that bright yellow. And then that darker tan color also disappeared from our output. So the vast majority of our fuel models represented in this landscape are going to be that GS1 and the GR1. Another thing that just happened was this submit analysis button became active because our landscape did generate and we can get that checkbox. So now I can go ahead and submit my model to run. And what this does is it captures and puts together the input file for the model run, sends it off to the Fire Model Services Framework, which is one of our connected services. They're going to do all the processing of the model, and then they're going to send us the output once it's processed. That process can be lengthy at times. If you're one of the first model runs for the day, it can take up to 30 minutes to spool up the service to be able to process that model. So realize sometimes the models can run rather quickly if you've been modeling, one after the other in succession. But if you're the first one in for the day, or it's been the first one for a while, it's going to take a little bit longer for that to process. So we probably won't get an output today for this example, but it is going to go ahead and process here. And I can keep an eye on that job right here where that blue bar is coming in. If the model fails, right here where it says analysis running, you'll have an analysis failed sign. And that's saying something happened on the Fire Model Services Framework side or communication from WFDS to the Fire Modeling Service Framework. And at that point, you would have to start a new model to get another model running. Since that is running, and I would like to show you guys what an output looks like, I'm actually going to change incidents. So bear with me. Go ahead and close this, and I'm going to swap to a different incident in the same general area. So it's still on the Coronado National Forest, but I am going to change to the Stronghold fire up here, which is a fire that happened Monday. There is FS Pro runs for this fire. So here you can see FS Pro runs showing up on the map. It'll display all of the runs, so you'll see several sequential runs here. And so I'll need to clean up my map to really see what's going on. In order to do that, I'm actually going to turn off all the incident layers, and then under the Analysis tab, I'm going to turn off my ignitions and my barriers and my masks. Go ahead and get rid of the landscape extent as well. And then for our results, turn off burn probability, average flame length, and average arrival time. And I just want to look at this last run here. Turn that back on. So here you can see the modeling output for that run. It did hit the well, that's not the most recent. Back up. Hit the wrong one. I want this one, not the other one. So here's our model output that was used for their decision yesterday. You can see here was the perimeter for that day showing up, and then the model run showing the probability of fire making it to each different probability cloud within that time frame. You can click on the legend here to see those percents here. They are the same as they were in WFDS Classic. Something new to NextGen that we didn't have in WFDS Classic is the ability to see our average flame length output in the map. So I'm going to click on that. It'll populate. Did I turn something off here? Oh. Yes, I did. There's our average flame length. So you can see fairly low flame lengths, which is actually to be expected in a desert fire because most of our fuel models are grass. And so that's kind of expected to have lower flame lengths here. But you can also look at the average arrival time output, see on average where the fire will be on a given day. And so here's the average arrival time. And pull up my legend here, scroll down past the landscape stuff. And so you can see that anything in the yellow is between day 1 and day 3. The fire should make it to that point. Blue is day 4, day 5, so on and so forth as we go out from there. We did only run a 7-day run, and so you can see day 8 here is a little bit misleading because it's saying that on day 8 it'll be out here. But actually what that means is day 1 was our ignition. So day 1 is the ignition for the burn, and then so basically take the day and subtract 1. So day 1 of burning would be this first yellow, day 2 of burning would be the second yellow, so on and so forth there. So there's our outputs as you can view them from the map. You can also download those outputs. So if I clicked on this little download icon, I could download a shapefile, geodatabase or KNZ for that fire. And then, of course, let's go ahead and go to the Analysis tab, and then I'll show the rest of the pieces there. Here you can see the FS Pro run that was included in the decision on the analysis summary. If I go down here, I can click on one of my previous runs here, and it'll pull landscape used. And I could download those outputs right here. If I clicked on that, I can download them. Oh, here I'm going to download the TIFF. That brings up my window to save it onto my C drive if I wanted to. I'm not going to, but I could. And here's the statusing. So once your run comes back successful, you can come in and set a different status. This run was statused as a calibration run because we were just trying to get a good, accurate run set up for that fire and making some changes. If I liked the output, though, I could come in here and say, okay, this run is complete for strategic use, which means it's a good model run for WFDS decision or any kind of strategic application. I could mark it complete for strategic use and then put in my notes on why this model output would be valid. Again, I'm not going to do that because it was indeed a calibration run, but the statusing portion here lets you kind of set up and let other analysts know what that model and output represents. So if it's just a model output that you want to reference as something maybe not to do again, maybe you tried an output and it's not working, you can go in here and set it as reference, put in, I tried a field model and it's just not going to work for the fire behavior we're seeing. You can also do a calibration here like we did where we were adjusting different outputs. Rick, you got a question?
Hey, just a quick note, your original run has completed.
Oh, wow, it was quick. We'll have to go back and look at that one too. And again, completed categories, we have 2 of them. Complete for operational use is something that is tied to the operations happening on the fire. So if you are modeling maybe the effects of a burnout or potential effects from a burnout, you could use complete for strategic or for operational use. The complete for strategic use is specific to the application saying, okay, this model run is a good run for the WFDS decision. And then last thing of note here is under the notes field, like I mentioned earlier, you can constantly put in additional notes or edit notes as you need to for that run. So before we jump to questions, which I do want to leave plenty of time for, I do want to pull up that last fire we just worked on, the Mason. Thanks for watching that, Rick, on the backside. So here you can see my output. I do want to come back here. It's showing the average arrival time because that's what I had turned on the other fire, but I want to change that back to burn probability so I can see the burn probability. So you can see that based on what we put in for the model run, the 80th to 100% probability does want to keep things to the south of most of town. There is a piece up here to the north that did skirt through the barrier, but I have a hunch, and if I turn my barrier back on, probably it's the end of my barrier. So that tells me is if this is truly a good barrier, I probably need to go in and make that barrier a lot longer to incorporate all of the model output there. But it's a decent calibration run based on what they've been saying for the potential for the fire is, and it gives you a good starting place to evaluate how this looks, talk to the local unit, make some tweaks, and maybe try another model or another model run, doing some tweaks on like fuel model or using different weather stations, so on and so forth. With that, I'm not going to demo anymore specifically, but I want to shift to questions related to analysis, and I can demo anything we need to for questions. See a question from Jennifer here, talking more about the arrival time outputs and how they would be used. Is it the probability of arrival day? Let me go back and I'll turn that later on and we can talk about it. Okay, this output has always been available in FS Pro, but it was part of the original download in WFDS Classic and wasn't used a ton for decision making. We decided to go ahead and include that output in the map here in NextGen for folks to start looking at using. It does represent a probabilistic output still, so it's not a replacement for near term or farsight, which is actually the same model in terms of projecting fire growth. But what this is doing is it's using the same statistics it used for your burn probability of saying, okay, there's a 90% probability that this pixel will burn in the next 7 days. This is actually saying of those 1,000 fires that I burned over a 7-day time period, on average, this is where the fire was on the end of the second or third day. Go ahead, Rick.
I'll nuance that just a little bit and say that this is out of the fires that reach a given pixel.
Correct.
What is the average day they reached it on? And the difference there is this average day doesn't tell you by itself how many fires actually got there. So
clarification.
Presumably somewhere on the outer edge of this, there are areas that were only touched by one fire, and it will show just what day that fire arrived at those places. So I would be careful about saying that this is the probability that it gets to somewhere on a specific day.
Very true. Very true. Thank you for that. Did that help, Jennifer?
That did, thanks.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Or any other questions not applicable to analysis that folks have that we can answer, since it is an open alpha hour?
So I had not caught that on the ERC bins that everything is coming in with the minimum fuel moistures. Is that correct, or for the live? So are those always going to have to be adjusted at this point, or maybe it's just the time of year?
No, at this point, FEMS is still working on their calculation for herbaceous and woody fuel moistures. And while they're working out that calculation on their back end, what we implemented so we could go ahead and get with this launched with FS Pro as a model is we defaulted those values to fully cured. So you do need to go in and make sure you change those values at the current. Once FEMS is confident with their calculations on their end, then we will do an update to our system and pull the values that FEMS is calculating. But for now, it's going to be set to the minimum 3060.
Okay, thanks.
To answer your question, Labita, it is the same capability in with this EDU. So EDU and prod have the same functionality for the modeling interface, yes. And then Sam, Mark Williams has a question that I think you would probably be better suited to answer.
Yeah, the tactics to be included. Tactics will be probably strategic actions. What that looks like, though, we're not sure because we're not sure what the DME funding looks like yet. So I don't know what the capability will be to get those strategic actions in there. And then we would need to get with the ISAP group to get the requirements lined out.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, no worries.
Talking on mute. Ben, your question about when 2025 for fire history will be available in WFDS, we had been waiting until the NIFC org had the time to get that data set populated. That data set is now done, and we're working through getting that integrated. I can't give you a definite date, but it'll probably be within the next couple months. We will have 2024 history available in WFDS.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, well, I won't keep anybody just holding out on the call. We will stay on for a little bit longer to see if anybody else has questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, but feel free to stay on if you potentially have questions. And otherwise, thanks for joining. We'll see you guys next time.